economic impacts that are being faced. And of course, we are focusing today on financing adaptation, but of course, we should also mention that there are non-economic losses, cultural heritage that is being threatened by climate change. And this is something one should also not forget, that there are things that are being lost from climate change that cannot be compensated with money. I would now like to turn to Minister Deuba. You have heard the statements from the island nations. You are coming from a completely different context from the context of Nepal, where the climate impacts are nevertheless also being felt increasingly and devastatingly with glacial melt, flooding, etc. Can you also comment from your perspective, from the perspective of High Asia, on this question of how to accelerate adaptation, momentum, finance, and how to minimize the future losses?
Thank you so much, Kira. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this conference, especially the Ministry of External Affairs of India and the ORF for inviting me here, and especially for organizing such a wonderful session, a session that is much required in this day and age. First of all, from the point of view of the V20 countries, and especially from the point of view of Nepal, I would like to say that just even for climate justice, the financial aspects of supporting adaptation has to be increased. And the increment is not only in billions, but like you said, like my colleague who spoke before me said, it has to be in trillions of dollars. And countries like Nepal, we already have our national adaptation plans. We have devoted 45% of our small country to the landscape is all under forest. It's heavily forested. We have preserved our land, but that doesn't ensure that we don't have climate-induced disasters. Just at the last of last monsoon, which is in September, we had 3 days of incessant rain. We lost livelihood, lives, infrastructure, crops, which totaled almost 45 billion Nepalese rupees, which is, I can't say, I'm very bad at converting money, but it's a lot of money for a country like Nepal. We are very committed to our NAPA plans, the National Adaptation Plans, but we need something like $45.9 billion in external assistance. And as you know, the environment right now is not right for raising that kind of money from the traditional donors. So what do we do? So this is why I think this conversation is at a very good point, because we need to reach out and look at more options for funding projects like this, for programs like this, and maybe reaching out to the private sector, debt like nature swaps for conservation, nature and debt swaps, green bonds, blended finance could be some of the ways out. But I have to tell you frankly, Nepal as a traditional country has not really thought through the processes of how we are going to initiate this. So conversations like this will surely help us in raising that kind of money. But even the conscious the consciousness and the conscience of the countries who have been responsible for increasing the global temperatures should think very seriously, because that doesn't really only affect island states or the glaciers melting in countries like mine. It affects the whole world. Where will we go if planet Earth dies? Where will we go if the temperature really rises to more than 2 degrees? These are very, very serious questions that we should look at. And it's not only funds that we need. We also need data. We need to know when the clouds are going to burst. We need to know when the storms are coming. We need to know when there is going to be no water. And we also need technologies. We in the morning session and in the sessions yesterday, we heard a lot about AI. So is it only going to benefit the aggrandization of rich economies? Or is AI also going to look at how issues such as drought, such as managing pollution, going to be will it adapt it? Will AI be adapted or trained towards these issues? Is it going to look at how diseases are migrating? So we have lots of issues that we need to look head on and tackle. Also, infrastructure that we have lost. For Nepal, it's very expensive to build infrastructure, and we don't have that much resources. But the minute we build it, we haven't really even used it, and it's gone. So how can we climate-proof infrastructure? Who's going to look at insurance, climate insurance risks? So these are many questions that need to be answered. And I'm glad I'm in this platform because these are questions I don't have answers to, but I think collectively, these are things that we can all talk to and come up with. And I think in the next questions, we are also going to look at some Marshall Plan issues. So I hope my other participants will also be talking to that. And thank you.
To ask you on this debt for nature swaps. Is this something that could provide an answer to financing adaptation and development in your viewpoint? Yes.
Okay. Like I said, this is for me a new concept, but I know it has been there for a long time. I think since 1987, WWF tried it out, and it has had mixed results. In many countries, it has worked well. In some others, it has not worked that well. And I think the basic of it is what Wangari just talked about. Okay, if we are going to, clear off our debt and do this, how is it going to benefit? Will you wipe our debt out? So when we talk about things like that, I think there are few things that we have to keep in mind, because I read in the literature that if it's like a 600 million equivalent debt, that's brought down to 100 million. So who is it really going to benefit? I think that is one question. The other is it really being used for what it is stipulated to be used for? So the technicalities of it, um, the, the, the modalities, the proceedings of how these debts are going to be worked out, I think needs some careful consideration. Same with green bonds and with blended finance. But as the world is moving along in a new path where maybe the traditional donor kind of grant may not be available in the near future, hopefully in the midterm and the long-term future, the world is going to look more different. uh, we have to start looking at these new ways of financing climate adaptation and mitigation measures. For this, I think the Marshall Plan is also something that will help us, because it will hopefully create a group. We should look at this very minutely and look at the kind of things required to actually do this kind of work with the private sector. Because the private sector also lives in the same world. It doesn't matter how rich you are. If your global commons, if you don't have good air to breathe, if you don't have good water to drink, it doesn't matter how rich you are. So I think the private sector also has a very strong role to play, but we need to point it out to them. But we also must have a methodology or different kind of modalities to ensure that it really does work, that there is some accounting for it, and really the voice of people sitting at the table talking about this is going to be very important. And I hope all of us will be sitting at the table talking about these issues.
Thank you. I'm now looking at potential questions. I'm looking at the Raisina Young Fellows.